Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Keep in mind that since this is a psychology YouTube channel, we're going to get into some potentially triggering material. So keep that in mind. Monitor yourself. Talk to your therapist if you have particular traumas that can be triggered by material on the show. So, and I'll also try to give trigger warnings when I think it's more necessary. So let's watch.
Because you have not gotten to your schedule. When you back in your schedule, is it going to be that much of an issue?
I think it's going to always be an issue if we're not making the time.
I'm just getting a little frustrated with, I'm going to make accommodations for stuff, but it's I'm going to work, and I'm trying my best,
All right, so Clay and AD are with Clay's mom and sister, and seemingly out of nowhere, Clay seemed to be getting defensive and upset about something that we weren't being exposed to. He seems to think, given what he's saying, that AD is being unreasonably restrictive or reactive about his working. He's been giving a lot of detail about his work and about how he just can't come home certain nights because there are things out of town that he has to tend to. And I don't know the validity of that, but there's been nothing from AD in this moment, so it makes me think that they must have had a fight about it at another point. So let's see how this goes.
Work. I love that you're an entrepreneur. I love that you have your jobs. I love that you do what you do. I never want to take that from you. That's one thing that we connected on, is that you are a hard worker. Work is not the problem. Work has never been the problem, ever.
So what's the problem?
Oh.
Sorry.
Whoa.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what he said is, so what's the problem? Because part of me thought he said, so it's a problem. But I think what he's, so what's the problem? Yeah, and his tone, and he's talking to her like they're like they hate each other, And maybe they do by now. The things that could be going on in this relationship, I could see it being fairly contentious. But if I was to take a guess, I would say that he is working a lot, and on paper, she's absolutely okay with that. She's not irrational about it. It sounds like she is taking a vacation from work for this process, and he's not. So she has more time to kill. And I imagine what could be happening is that there's a distance that she is noticing and is either communicating that, and then they get in a fight, and he walks away thinking that she is yelling at him about work when she's really just saying, hey, I just feel a distance. Or it devolves into a conversation about his work. There's something to keep in mind that often happens in fights, where if you're not really mindful of what is really going on with you when you bring up a complaint, you can be easily derailed into details. So a common, I don't know about them, but AD could have felt distance and might have consciously been thinking about, God, he works too much. I wish he was home more often, and doesn't really pay attention and investigate, well, okay, it's not that he works too much. It's, what is it then? Oh, I feel rejected, or I feel distance. Okay. So, but even if she did have awareness of that, she goes in and talks to him. It's just like, so I just want to talk about, it just feels like you're really distant lately or something. And what are you talking about? I have to work. He thinks he's being accused of working too much, but that's not really what's happening. I mean, it's part of the issue, but, he starts getting defensive about work. And he's like, what? You have a problem with people working? And then she says, no, of course not. But you work way more than what other people work. Okay, so now you're going down this road of detail. You're fighting about work, but that isn't the baseline. That wasn't even where you wanted to stay, but because he got defensive about that, then, because what he says, there's a problem with it, right? And in my made-up scenario, he says, I'm working totally normal hours. And then from AD's perspective, she's like, no, you're not. But if she had time to think, she'd be like, no, you're not, but I don't care. That's not the issue. It's not that you work a lot, but it's this other issue. But, you can see how that would go down. And then it sounds like he walked away from the conversation thinking it was about work. What's going on there? Is he out of the relationship already, and he's trying to show why he's trying to show off or demonstrate, this is why I'm going to say no at the altar. I mean, just look at her, that kind of thing. or dynamic-wise, he's regressing because he's around his mom, or he feels emboldened. He deep down feels like a hurt, scared little child, which all of us do at times. And when it's just the two of them, he has a hard time standing on his own 2 feet. Now that his mom's here, he feels like he has support. He's got backing, and so he's more bold. I don't know. What do you think?
It's just
I'm gonna have a sip. Sorry.
So you don't think the times when we're just laughing, gossiping, and stuff like that, those are not bonding? Those are not, I'm asking you though. You get clarity.
We've had a few moments,
Yeah.
yes, for sure.
But you don't think it's enough?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah. This is a good conversation. A little tip out there, a different way to word this is not debating about the amount of times, but about the feeling, the need that you want to meet. Now, that depends on you knowing your needs and emotions and understanding that you are worthy of your needs and your emotions. We don't always get what we need, right? But she could say, well, for whatever reason, regardless of the amount of times that we are just hanging out and chatting and maybe even bonding, I guess my needs are such that I want more. That's a much different statement than, the 2 times out of the week is not enough. It also isn't really the point because, if he does 2 more nights a week, but he's grumbling the whole time or he's surface, then it's not meeting the need. Or if you are in AD's shoes and you're just like, if I can only get 2 more nights, instead of focusing on what you really want, which is connection and love and intimacy, contact, because there might be another way is the thing. That's why when you have needs and a request to your partner, it's better to talk about the baseline without talking about your solution. Because if she said, so, and I don't know, they look kind of like they're done. I feel like ever since, my contact on the show said that they had a fight pretty early on during the getaway, and it was on camera, but it was cut from the show. And apparently it was something regarding her body issues, which we could imagine what the fights were. And then the next morning, my contact said they might have had another fight in the morning, and then they had that soup scene. The way that they were looking at each other, the way they were talking to each other, it did not look positive. It didn't look like it did before that. And so I suspect that they're done, honestly. It just kind of has that look to it. But I don't know. Who knows? I thought Chelsea and Kwame were a no, but they were a yes. So what do I know? But if it's true that they're kind of done, then it doesn't really matter. But if she were to say to him, in a different world where they're not done, that she could say, hey, I don't know what the solution is, honey, but I love you and I miss you. In fact, you could just end it there. I feel distance from you. I mean, this is something that me and my wife say to each other at times is, I miss you, or just something that, it's more inviting, it's more positive than you're never around, right? If any of you have kids or you work with kids, you probably know these principles. You don't say to a kid, you're terrible at picking up toys. You say, when they're not picking up the toys, right? You say, yesterday you were so good at picking up the toys. And the kid's like, huh? Oh, and then they lean into it, right? To criticize and punish is, it might work because they don't want to feel that pain, but it doesn't build goodwill. It's not particularly good at shaping behavior. So she could just say, well, I don't know. I just miss you. I feel distance and it doesn't feel good. And then that, who knows about Clay, but to someone that like when my wife says that to me, or I say it to her, it provokes an immediate response because there's no accusation, there's no hostility. It's inviting, it's hopeful. And then boom, even right there in that moment, the solution happens right away.
Because she doesn't get it. She's not working. I'm trying my best with this process, but I need a little bit of just hey.
It's called grace. I just think that both of you have to give each other grace.
Yeah, the mom's message is wise. It's the message of, okay, it's fine, but yeah, where's the grace? I even use that word. And the way that I think she's using it, the way that I use it, is that you're giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. You are trying to work with them. You give some patience, some goodwill, some effort. Even when you think that you're right and you are righteous, you give grace.
What I want to say, I mean no disrespect, but I'm going to say this because I'm 59 years old and I've been married for close to 24 years and I can do that. I think that you have to understand his work schedule.
Well, she's about to say, but. I was hoping she was going to say, son, your tone, and maybe it's rational or deserved. We clearly missed out on another fight. Either it wasn't on camera or they edited it out or something. We're hearing a later conversation, I think, about maybe at least one fight.
But it has to be a balance. Now, I understand that you have to go to work and it's from one location, whatever, but if someone is important, you make the time, period.
If I were there, I would say, well, one, I would just be really curious as to whether both of them have at least 9 toes out of the door, especially given his attitude towards her today. But if they don't have 9 toes out of the door, then I would ask, well, so as a therapist, this is a common kind of mode that I'll go in. It's a solution-focused, you could say it's postmodern narrative kind of thing, but essentially it's like, okay, we're being presented with a problem. As a therapist, we tend to focus on the problem. How do we fix the problem? One way to fix the problem is to not talk about the problem, but to talk about the solution. And the solution is not the solution to the problem, but the solution that already has happened. So the question is, okay, like to the two of them, AD and Clay, I might ask, tell me about a time recently that you felt, well, first off, I would want to define the problem. I would say, so let's define the problem. I'm hearing you talk about work. Is that the problem, or is that just a symptom of the problem, or is that just a factor in the problem? I would hope that they would say, yeah, work is not the problem. The problem, I guess, is something, distance, something like that, rejection, whatever. Okay. When was the last time the two of you managed to have a period of time where you didn't have those feelings? Or in what feelings are you trying to get? Well, I want togetherness and love and da-da. Okay, so when was the last time the two of you had that? Okay. And I don't know, but I could imagine AD saying, well, when we first got back from the getaway, the first couple days, he was only working a certain amount, and then I would divert away from the work thing. I'd say, well, what else was going on? If you were a fly on the wall watching the two of you, what would you see? What behaviors would you see? This method doesn't always work, by the way, but it can work magically. So sometimes what clients will say, they might say is, well, okay, well, what I saw was that Clay was a lot nicer. He was putting effort. He was more affectionate. He asked more questions. He seemed like he wanted to be with me. Okay, and what does that look like exactly? Because so often in relationships, we are being accusatory of our partner in the abstract. And if you're receiving that accusation, it can feel very frustrating because often, at the very least, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But at worst, you're thinking, well, that's just all in your head. That's a very frequent thing, defensive thing. It's like, well, you're just making that up. But if we identify behaviors that you can see and do and say, when you did this, then it made me feel this way. And sometimes, it can be kind of general, like you watched a movie with me on the couch. We spent time together. Okay. So it's not like a discrete moment of behavior. It's spread out, but it's still something that you could observe. It can help to communicate that. It can help to understand that. But also, when you focus on that, it shifts the conversation away from a problem to a solution, and it shifts their mindset from weakness to strength. They'll say, oh, well, I guess we have had it. And he might even hear that and say, oh, so she isn't all negative about me. She identified a moment in which I was doing good by her, in her opinion. So I'm not just getting complaints and negativity and criticism. Right now, I'm being complimented for something I did a while back. I want to have that feeling again. It's the same when you're talking to a kid and you're just like, yesterday you were so good at picking up toys. I just loved it. It was so great. Kids are like, ooh, I like that feeling, especially if it's in the moment. I love the way you're putting away toys. Like another example is the kid is kind of putting away the toys, and you're just watching and you're trying not to criticize. And eventually the kid gets away to putting a toy away, and then you pounce on that. Oh, you put away that toy. You're amazing at putting away toys. You're so good at that. You put it on the shelf. You knew exactly where. You're so good. Even though out of the 10 things that they did, only one of them was something that you were hoping that they would do. It's well understood that will shape behavior. You could call it social engineering or molding behavior or manipulating behavior. But it works. And the same principle applies. It's not manipulating your partner. It's not getting in your own way, essentially. So anyway, so she's saying, she's kind of getting into the work thing. But because if Clay doesn't work as much, which I don't even imagine happening right away. He's nodding his head, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's just placates, like, yeah, I'm going to respect my mom, but in back of his head, I'm not going to stop working. Say he did stop working a little bit, I don't think that would solve their problems. I think it's probably more fundamental to the vibe between them when they do see each other. Because let's say Clay and her were very bonded when they were together, and then he does work a lot, and it's they miss each other. And while he's at work, he calls her because he loves her. And when he doesn't call, AD, it misses, but she has this tank that she can rely on of love that has happened recently. I'm guessing that doesn't exist, given what my hypothesis about their relationship. Basically, they're going through the motions. That's kind of the way it looks to me.
The love is there. You make the time. Period.
Is it written in the stars?
Marriage is hard, okay?
Yeah, he's just nodding his head. I mean, given what he was saying earlier, I have a hard time believing that all his mom has to say is, you need a balance. Essentially, you need to do what she's saying, which is work less. And even if that were true, if he is that easily convinced, why would he be so cut off to AD? I don't know. Now, maybe AD was unfair off camera. We just didn't see the fight, so we just have no idea.
The most sacred institution there is. And I say that even though my marriage failed, but 23 years, that's a nice run, you know?
Okay, did I know that? So, she said failed. I'm not a fan of failed. It ended. And certainly it doesn't sound like she failed, at least from the details that we know. But yeah, I don't think we knew that they had split. So Clay's parents broke up. Okay. All right, well, I want to remind everyone that we have merch, and I'm also on Cameo if you're interested. Merch, the button should be below, and also the Cameo should be below the link. I like doing cameos. It's fun. Cameo actually reached out to me years ago, and I thought, really? I don't know if anyone would want that. And I also kind of thought of Cameo as sort of cheesy, but when I started to get into it, I found it to be really delightful. It's a way to have. I like telling people happy anniversary. I like telling people happy birthday. I like just feels nice. One time I even proposed over Cameo to someone. By the way, if you're watching right now, I don't know if I ever got a resolution to that. Did they say yes? Did you get married? I need to find out. So, there's Cameo. And if you do get a Cameo, try to tell me what to do. Because if you just say, tell this person happy birthday, I'm like, oh, happy birthday. And then that's the end of the Cameo. I don't know what else. So it helps if you give it a little bit of flourish, like some details, or tell me to talk about something, like the weather or attachment styles or something. Also, merch. We have lots of merch. I'm looking if I have any merch. Sometimes merch is around me. I don't have any. There's mugs and shirts. I wear the shirts almost every day. I like the shirts, and you can have those shirts. And if you're ever in public, you might run into another person that knows this channel. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.